Hey guys, welcome back again from Tampa Bay. Today I'm going to do the full review of the 2014 Yamaha FJR 1300 ES. I have almost 1,000 miles on this one, but don't take this as a new rider's experience to the FJR because my previous one I put on over 50,000 miles on. And this is a Generation 3. It is really close to a Generation 2. I've told people this before that have asked, and they say, you know, I've got a Generation 2. Is it worth upgrading? And my honest answer is, there aren't any big changes. There really aren't. I mean, the ES system, which I'll talk about, is obviously a big change specific to the 2014. But other than that, if you do a certain type of riding, it's not really going to be worth it to you. Unless you happen to have a really old bike, which a couple of people I know have done, where they needed a lot of maintenance coming up and new parts and thousands of dollars worth of work. So it was pretty much put the money into an old bike or just buy a new one. So it made a lot more sense just to buy a new one. So let me go over it. Now, before I start this though, if you haven't checked out my previous video on the changes between this and the old version, check that out because I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that. This is just going to be a nice straight review. Obviously, it's a gorgeous freaking bike. I mean, that's personal perception and opinion, but I love it. I'm not a red guy, which I've mentioned before, but this red has a lot of depth. It's not a fire engine red. It looks different. It takes on a more metallic orange. It doesn't go orange, but it has an orange tint to it in direct sunlight. In the shade here, we're overcast. I mean, it's just a thick, glossy, beautiful red. They really did a great job. It's a little bit dirty now. I was just out for a ride. I got some bugs and dirt down there, but it's easy to maintain. It's easy to clean. Just a fantastic machine. So let's go ahead and get on the road, and I'll give you all my thoughts about it so far. Now, starting out, I'll just talk about how it fits. It is not an especially tall bike. Kind of looks like it. The problem is the width. And I say problem because it really does pose a problem for shorter riders. Now, I'm not especially tall in the legs. I have somewhere between a 30 and 32 inch inseam depending on the pants. Looks like I need some fuel, so I know where I'm going first. The seat is so wide that it eats up your height. Now with these boots on, I have no problem flat footing. And I can stand up, and there is maybe an inch between me and the seat when I fully stand up. Now that's with the suspension in the lower setting. If I put it up for two riders, that eats that inch up. And my seat is in the low position. This has an adjustable seat. You can raise it up 1 inch. I don't really know anybody that uses the tall position, to be honest with you. Startup is always a breeze on this. This is a very old engine design based on previous generation R1, bored out, tuned for more torque. And they also have a watercraft version, which I'm very familiar with. And that is in all of Yamaha's top-end wave runners. An excellent design, have to say. I wish they would pull the supercharger. Let's see, I need fuel. I wish they would pull the supercharger over to the motorcycle line. That would be really cool. Hello, kitty cat. Don't run out. Saturday morning. Real nice weather out. 77 degrees. This is absolutely perfect riding weather. Overcast, cool. Even though it's high humidity because we had rains again last night, it feels wonderful. I'm going to run up to Sam's Club first. Oh shoot, forgot my wallet. Glad I checked that. Alright, I'm going to run back to the house first. That's alright, gives me more time to talk. Ergonomics are excellent, and it's also very adjustable. Besides the seat being adjustable, the handlebars are also. They have 3 positions. They can make you basically unbolt these 2 little compartments here, and these can swing forward or back. So it can come back more like a cruiser style, or they can go forward more like an off-road style. They're right in the middle stock, and that's where I prefer them. Now the kitty cat's out in the street. How you doing, kitty cat? The reach is very good. There are bar risers available to give you an extra inch plus of height if you need that. I have a tall torso, but these are still absolutely fine. There's no pressure on my hands. I'm not leaning on my wrists. And by the way, if you do ride a motorcycle and you have pains in your wrist, it's because you're putting weight on them. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to be supporting yourself by your legs and your torso, your core muscles, and not putting weight on your wrists. Rise. Let's go find that wallet. Do. There it is. Haha. Now we can get fuel. I guess I'll show you the headlights here. Standard headlights. All right, nothing special about the bulbs. There are HID kits that you can install. They may not be legal in your state because these reflectors are not designed for them, and with HIDs it's very important they're aimed properly so they don't blind oncoming drivers. The running lights are LED, and they spill a lot onto the ground. They're actually really cool. The first time I was out riding, I thought there were always cars behind me because these were spilling so much light straight down it looked like the car headlight was behind me. Really fantastic. I do wish they would have done LED lights for the headlights also and the tail lights. Taillights are just standard bulbs. They haven't changed this design in, I don't know, 12 years. Whole back end's the same. But the headlights do function very well. I have no problem with the throw. They have good distance. You can put brighter bulbs in them like the Silver Stars or the PIAAs. And those work very well. I've run them in my cars. I've run them in my previous bike. The only problem with them is they have very short lifespans, and they're not cheap. They have multiple models available, and they range from 30 to 60 bucks a pair. You know, compare that to, what, $6 or $7 a pair for normal bulbs. These normal bulbs, I don't know how long they last. I mean, I never burned one out. They seem to go forever. But the Silver Stars, you're lucky. I mean, it obviously depends on how much you use them, but I was getting 1 to 2 years out of a set. And they claim on the box 50% brighter, but if you look at the fine print, it says 50% brighter, and then in very small print, than worn out regular headlights. Well, duh, that's pretty easy to be brighter than worn out headlights. So what I found was, they might be 20% brighter. It's noticeable. It's not a big deal. I don't notice any longer throw. The main difference in the aftermarkets is the bulb color. These stock ones, in comparison, have just a little bit of a yellow tint to them, whereas the Silver Stars have a more white light, and it gives the illusion that they're brighter. They're just not that much. Ooh, nice stone. That was a foreclosure house. They've been working on it for weeks, and it basically had this old jungle in the front with huge trees, and they came and they carefully cut the trees and took out the stumps. Now they put in those rocks. I would not mind having a rock yard at all, but it's only real good for the first year or so, and then the weeds start coming through. It doesn't matter how much you treat, how much you burn it, how much you chemically spray it, the weeds come through down here in Florida. But I like the look. Anyway, back to the bike. Very comfortable, excellent seating position, no weight on your hands. It's not fully upright, but it's definitely not leaned over. You can, if you wish, go into a tuck and actually lean right on the tank. Although if you do that, I do suggest you put on a tank protector. I had little tiny scratches right here on my previous bike from some zippers and buttons and stuff, so I'm very conscious about that right now. I don't lean down onto the tank at all. We don't have twisty roads or tracks or anything like that around here, so it's not like I'm treating it like a sport bike, which would be cool, but I just don't have the option. But this is a very versatile model in that you can make the bike do so many different things for you. You can take the bags off, put the suspension up to hard, and even if it's a regular model, not the ES, you can flip the preload in the back, and it performs like a big sport bike. And I say big because it's a huge 1300cc engine, and it's got some extra length to it. But then you can put the bags on, and you can put on an optional trunk bag also for almost triple the room, and go on a trip. You can take 2 people, take all your gear. You can go on a cross-country tour, take all your gear. It'll do it, no problemo. I love the gauges. I have to say the previous generation was a little bit more usable though, but these work fine. I've seen some people complain about the glare because the screen is glossy. It hasn't bothered me. I turned my brightness up, which you can do through the menu, and I have no problem reading it in any conditions. Maybe those people just haven't turned it up enough. It was pretty dim from the factory, I'll say that. But turned up, it's not quite up all the way for me. I think I'm 2 notches below maximum. So if you have that problem, give that a shot. You may not be aware that the feature is there to modify that. You have to go into the deeper settings menu just to read your owner's manual. Looking at it at a glance, the tachometer is great. It's analog, it's right there all by itself on the left. Speedo's a big digital readout. I don't mind it, it works fine. I would have preferred an analog gauge for the speedo. It's just glancing down for a quarter second easier to read than a digital where you have to decipher it in your head. Even if it takes a half second, that's longer than it takes to just look at a sweep analog gauge. And the previous generations had an analog speedometer. So, not that the digital's bad. The other problem with it is, and I don't even know if I'll call it a problem, it has so many features that it packs everything. Come on, Grandpa. It packs everything onto the gauge. So right around, great driving, right around the speedometer readout, it has so much information. Your clock right underneath it, your touring or sport mode right above it, your fuel gauge and economy warning right above and to the left of it, all surrounding the digital speedo display. And that eco display turns on and off automatically. All right, I'm going to fuel up here and we'll continue in a bit. Now here's something else I love about the bike. Regular gas. Many high-performance bikes require premium. Boom, there's a 30 to 40 cent per gallon savings right there. Here's another big plus. Big tank size, 6.6 gallons. Like I said in a previous video, I don't take it down too far. Save your fuel pumps. So I had a gallon left in here, over a gallon. 1.1 gallons left. Tons of range. Easy. 250 to 300 miles a tank. Obviously, depending on how you ride. Now, I'm typically getting 42, 43, somewhere around there. But I do mostly city driving, or city riding, and I do spirited acceleration. So that does eat up your mileage, but you know what? I call it smiles per mile. I have no problem with that. Let's see what kind of average I'm getting here. Go through the info. It's already up to 82 degrees, so I'm going to make this review as quick as I can. I don't feel like being out here at 95 again. My fuel average, if you can see that, is currently 42.5, and that's since I got the bike. So that was through break-in, which was about 45. I don't know the extent that this resets, but it does update fairly quickly, so it's not like a permanent average. I have a feeling it updates every few miles. Come on, Prius. Okay. You just want to stop in the middle of the intersection. That's fine. Looks like we might have a little bit of a rainstorm coming in off the Gulf. Let's see, where do I want to go? I'm gonna take some back roads here. I don't feel like dealing with traffic while I talk. Drivability is excellent overall. I have no problem whatsoever with the way it handles in any situation. The engine is just beautiful. I love the previous generation. This one performs virtually identical. The only difference being the throttle. It's electronic now, so it's ride-by-wire. It is much smoother. The old one had a tendency on many bikes to be a little jerky, to be a little sudden. And this one is very linear. You can put it in sport and it is just absolutely as responsive as you want to twist it. You can put it in touring and it will smooth it out, dumb it down a little bit. Great for riding two-up. So they did improve that. Power-wise, they feel about the same. They did add a couple horsepower to this. Honestly, I can't feel it. I don't know anyone that can honestly feel just a few horsepower. It's like all those people that put on a Power Commander and, oh, I gained 3 horsepower. Oh my God, it's so much faster. No, it's really not. It's in your head. But if you want to make yourself feel better, go ahead and believe that. They did also change the torque curve. That, I want to say I can feel. Now, they didn't add too much, only, again, a couple foot-pounds. But if you look at some dyno curves from independent tests, it is a little flatter and it comes in a little bit lower. What that gives you is more usable power down low. What that translates to in real-world riding is, if I'm doing 30 or above, I can be in 5th gear, top gear, and just twist the throttle. There's no chugging, there's no lugging. The engine doesn't mind whatsoever. It just starts to accelerate. And at that point, 30 and above, the only advantage to downshifting is accelerating faster. You don't need to downshift to make the engine happy. The old one, it was closer to 40. I would get a little bit of chugging and hesitation in 5th gear below 40. So typically I would downshift into 4th or 3rd if I was accelerating or trying to pass somebody going down a normal road, for example. This, I don't. I just stay in 5th. So we're going down to 35 here. I'm going to come down to 30 and just roll on. Doesn't mind a bit. And that wasn't full throttle. I'll give it a full throttle in 5th from 30. Okay, here's full throttle just below 30. Smooth acceleration. No lugging, no chugging. Bam, there's 50. That was in top gear. That was all torque. That was at 2,000 RPM. Went from 30 to 50 in just a couple seconds. Very smooth. I mean, that's what you get with a typical V-twin. That's why cruisers are so great around town, because they can do that from idle, which makes them awesome for just slow speed cruising, especially with a passenger. You don't have to be shifting around a lot. If you ride a Harley, for example, it's really fun to ride slow. You have an extremely low center of gravity, so handling is just a dream. And you have all that gobs of torque from idle with a V-twin. So you don't have to worry about anything. You can just twist the throttle. Doesn't matter what gear you're in, just and you go. So this bike, you get that from about 30. So they did improve the engine that way. The other improvements are all internal. You don't feel a thing. Heat management, they also improved through better designed fairings and heat guards on the side. The old model, now down here, you know, in the summer, we're 9,500 degrees. And when you're sitting in a light, even in a bike like this, which is water cooled, so you have a radiator just like a car, you get some heat. And it comes up on your legs and your ankles and your crotch. and you feel it. I mean, it's hot. It's not fun. They definitely improved it with this 3rd generation. I'm not saying it's cool, but I don't feel the heat radiating through these side fairings onto my legs like I did with the previous one. And that's just because they changed the way the airflow comes from the radiator, which is straight down here, and it blows over the engine, and it blows more down onto the ground and around the sides. So it's much better for the rider. No difference to the engine. The engine temps are still the same. They're 200, 210, 215, 220, depending on what you're doing and how hot it is. So no difference to the actual heat being produced. It's just going in a different direction, which is perfect. I love the mirrors on this bike. They are identical. I never had a problem with the old generation. They didn't update them. They didn't change them. They simply work. They are wide enough where my hands and arms are not blocking the view. That is the #1 problem with all motorcycle mirrors. True mirrors, I don't mean bar end clip-ons. They're physically too narrow compared to your body, and you can't see anything. So they're basically only there for legal reasons, not functional reasons, which are completely pointless. But these, I see just a sliver of my hands and arms on the inside of them. I have them adjusted where I can see, if I just tilt my head just a couple inches to the left or the right, I can see completely behind the bike, and I can see what's next to me in my blind spot. I have to turn my head to see what's really next to me, but you do that on a motorcycle anyway. So they really give you confidence, and that's what's the most important about having good mirrors on a motorcycle, is it gives you confidence. Most motorcycles, because the rider knows they're useless, they don't even use them. They have to crank their head every time they need to look somewhere. But I can use these. They are really good. So they give me that extra confidence to look and know that I can see what I can see, turn my head for the little extra, and that's it. So they're great. And they're also vibration free, which is the #2 problem with motorcycle mirrors. These are glass smooth at all speeds. There's no shaking. The glass elements aren't in the wind, and they simply work. A lot of other ones, especially little clip-on ones, they're absolutely useless because you can't make anything out in them. You might see headlights, but that's about it, because they're vibrating so much and they're all blurry. So there's that. The windscreen, in the down position, it's great. Again, in this kind of heat, I need the airflow. However, they did change the whole mechanism from the previous generations. They improved the speed. It's twice as fast going up or down, but they changed the angle. In the up position, it is not nearly as effective. #1, and this is probably the most important thing, it's angled back more. The old one, when you put it in the up position, it went more to an upright position. So it was more effective as a wind block. It wasn't, as far as I can tell, any taller. It was just a different angle. So obviously I can't change the angle of this one, but I can change the height, because there are many different optional aftermarket windscreen options. It simply bolts on and off. You change out the plexiglass for something else. Now you can get them with all different kinds of shapes and sizes and designs. You can have them tinted. They come with different angles. I have one on order. It's supposed to come in just a few days, and I wanted to do this review before I put it on. I'll also do a comparison review and a how-to and how to install it, of course. But I wanted to do this review based on the stock equipment as you would buy it. So what you want it to do in the up position is give you what's called a bubble. And it is literally a bubble of still air. What it does is remove all of the wind, and I mean all of it, from hitting you. It creates this negative pressure area all the way around you, and it gets silent. All you hear is literally the sounds of the engine underneath you, and it's just amazingly comfortable, especially for long distance riding. if you're on the highway, if you're taking a long trip. It gets rid of all the wind noise from your helmet. Now I can put this in the up position, but I have to duck my head down 2 to 3 inches to get in the bubble, whereas the old generation, it just worked out of the box. It's also great for riding 2-up and riding for in the rain, because it directs all the water completely around you and you stay nice and dry, including your passenger. So what I ordered is the optional Yamaha windscreen. It is a stock order item, and I did that primarily because of aesthetics. I love the look of this stock windshield. It flows with the bike. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't want any kind of tint. I don't want any kind of funny angles. I don't want it super wide. You know, this is what I like. So the stock, the optional from Yamaha is a different angle. It removes the back curve that the stock one now has, and it's 4 inches taller. Now I talked to a couple people in other hot climates, and they said they have it, and in the low position you still get enough wind on you, and that's critical. If I put on a windscreen and in the low position I don't have a lot of wind hitting me, I can't use it because I need it for cooling. So that'll be the key when I stick it on. I'm confident that it will work in the up position, and the only question is how well will it work in the down position. But I'll see that in just a few more days. So just be aware of that. Now I'm 6'2", and like I said, a 30 or 32 inch inseam, so I do have a slightly tall torso. If you're a shorter rider, this may work perfectly for you. Like I said, I only have to duck down 2 or 3 inches to make it perfect in the up position. The controls, I had to get used to them, but now they're pretty darn intuitive. The main thing was getting used to where these switches up here to activate the menus were. I kind of wanted to use my thumb at first, but that's your cruise control, so you have to reach up here with your index finger now. Of course, that's all new for this generation, but it was just more natural to me to use my thumb, so that was the only big thing. The other thing I get used to is the combination start, stop, run switch. Normally you have a run and a stop, and then you have a separate start button that you engage. Well, I've tried to start it a couple times while it was already started because I'm used to hitting off. So that it didn't do any damage. The Bendix gear in here is non-interference, so it didn't do anything. It just spun, but that did take a little getting used to. It was kind of strange. Oh, let's see. Talked about the tank. That's awesome. Tires. Tires so far are excellent. These are a different model on this Generation 3 that they're putting stock. However, reports from people say that tire life is not approved. All the stock tires that have come with the FJR have really kind of sucked for tire life. 5,000-6,000 miles you're worn out, and then you're at 400 plus a pop to change them out, and that's really not that long a distance, especially compared to a typical car. It's normal for a high performance car. That's about what I was getting out of my Mini Coopers. But if you're in a normal family car, I mean, you're going to be used to getting 15,000-20,000 miles out of a set of tires. Now, luckily, there are great aftermarket options that can give you 10 or 12,000 miles and still have great performance, such as the PR4s. I don't really know where I'm going. I'm just kind of staying away from traffic right now, if you were wondering. So, tire performance, excellent. I mean, they're comfortable, they grip very well, very smooth. I have no complaints about the way they're running. Now, we don't have a lot of twisties around here, so I'm going to be wearing out the center strips, as most bikes do in Florida. Oh yeah, and pickup, freaking rocket ship. I mean, rocket ship. If you run the gears in this, there are very few bikes that are faster. It's just gobs of insane power. And that's what 150 horse and 100 pounds of torque will do on a relatively light bike if you're riding alone. The other benefit to having that power, and it's not to run it like a sport bike, it's not designed to do that. It's designed to carry cargo and carry a passenger and still have ample power, and it does. Even with a passenger, it takes most bikes. And that's what it's designed to do. Not only do that, but do it in comfort. Comfort, let's talk about that. The only problem I have is the stock seat, and this is a completely personal decision and choice. Some people have no problem whatsoever with the stock seat. I do after 100 miles. It's only on the longer duration rides, but it kind of bruises my tailbone, and it's just from the change in padding that they gave it. The shape of it is great. Holds me just fine. I have no pressure points. That's fine. It's simply the padding and the overall way it supports you. It just seems to be hitting more in the center. But I'm a heavier guy. Lighter riders don't seem to have a problem. There are, of course, tons of aftermarket solutions, and as soon as the slot opens up, I'm going to be putting on a Lamb seat, L-A-A-M. You can look him up. And of course, I'll let you know how that goes. Have a lot of positive feedback, and it is aesthetically as close to stock as I found in a good aftermarket solution. Not too expensive, about $380 or so plus shipping there, so big deal. That should be a very good choice. Other than that, I mean, beautiful. It has mid controls, so your feet are directly below you. There's plenty of leg room. My knees are not bent too far at all. They're very comfortable. I've never ever had any kind of leg fatigue or ankle fatigue or anything like that. Foot position on the pegs is good. They're just standard round pegs. I've seen some aftermarket stuff for them. I've never had the need to go to forward controls. I don't want any kind of rear controls. I don't think you can even do that on this model anyway. So I'm really a fan of mid control. It's just more comfortable for me, especially in this somewhat upright seating position. Braking is absolutely phenomenal. It has linked braking, where the rear brake will partially activate the front automatically. You simply don't feel a thing. I mean, it just works. Effort is literally one finger. Beautiful controls. The actual controls, the physical levers, are fully adjustable forward and back, so you can get your reach perfectly dialed in. Clutch is beautiful. I really can't tell if they adjusted it or not from previous generations. I believe they did, but I can't tell. It works very well for me. It's not effortless, but it's not a hard pull by any means. Very smooth. The clutch engagement zone is beautiful. Took maybe, I don't know, 10 shifts to really get it in my head where the shift zone is, and it's a no-brainer now. Very good feedback. And speaking of feedback, let's talk about vibration. Out of the box, I had a quite annoying vibration. I talked about this in my bar ends weight install video. I had a quite annoying vibration right around 4,000 RPM where you're cruising between 70 and 80. And I put on the aftermarket bar ends, and it did smooth it out at that point. But what I found is they introduced more vibration a little bit lower. So now cruising like here on normal city streets had the vibration where it didn't before. So that was no good. I took those back off, put the stock ones back on. Now what I did to fix it, and it is completely fixed at all RPMs by the way right now, is I did the 600 mile service, including the throttle body sync, and that did it. Surprisingly, they weren't that far out. 2 cylinders were just out of spec. Putting those back in so they're all synced, absolutely butter smooth at all RPMs now. I mean, it's beautiful. Couldn't ask for a more vibration-free bike. It's more vibration free than my old stock one was. My old one, I never quite had it bad enough where I wanted to put on the bar ends, but I had done several throttle body syncs to the old one, and it never got as smooth as this. So whatever they did, it may be, I don't think they changed the handlebars, so it's probably something in the engine design they did. Maybe it's tighter tolerances between the pistons and cylinders now that they've gone from steel sleeves to Nickel-line cylinders. I don't know, but it is smoother. Car wash, get your car scratch day. Yeah, no thanks. That's what I want. People roughing up my paint. I can see doing those if it's your kids or something for an organization you belong to or whatever, but oh my God, if you care about your car or bike's finish, never, ever, ever do these kinds of car washes. That is just pure scratch hell right there. So let's talk about noise. The FJR has always had a fairly tame sound. A lot of people compare it to a sewing machine. It has that mechanical, smooth whine to it, and I love it. I think it sounds great. A lot of people don't. They want it to sound more throaty. Well, number one, inline fours are never going to sound throaty no matter what kind of exhaust can you put on it. It's just the way it is. But you can make it a little bit deeper. There are a couple modifications you can do. Some people have drilled out the stock mufflers to eliminate some of the baffles so they're freer flowing, and it changes the sound a little bit. And of course there are several different aftermarket exhausts you can bolt on. They are not inexpensive. They generally start around $1,000. And again, they might give you a couple horsepower, but you're not going to feel it. It's going to be in your head. And they change the sound a little bit too, but not that much. Certainly not at idle, and certainly not at full throttle. The basic sound of this engine will come out no matter what you do to the exhaust. If you want a real throaty, rumbling engine, you've got to get a V-twin or a V4. Even a triple with independent exhausts are going to sound a lot meaner. Big inline fours just have that smooth sound. And this isn't meant to have that kind of sound. It's a sport touring bike. It's made for people to take more relaxing rides than, a big rumbler. So I'm not going to be putting any kind of aftermarket exhaust on. I don't care if it was $200 for a set of cans. I wouldn't waste $200 just to change the sound. But $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, some of them are that much, just to change the sound is ridiculous to me. Not knocking you. If you want to spend that kind of money on it, if it's that important to you, go ahead. Customize your bike all you like. But I'm just saying, it's a big investment for zero performance. But you know what? There are people that spend a lot more than that on things like paint jobs. And that's purely aesthetic too. And that's no problem. Let's talk about the gearbox. It is a little notchy. I would never describe it as a smooth transmission. It never has been. But it works very well. I did have mechanical problems with my previous one. Why does everybody want to race me? I mean, it is just a given. And I'm not racing people. They just see me and they try to pass me. They try to race me. Doesn't matter if it's a car, truck, van, whatever. Maybe it's the color. I don't remember this happening this much with my previous one, which was blue. Which I loved, by the way. It was a beautiful blue. I'm not even sure if I would have bought the red one if I had the choice. Oh, color aesthetics, that's another thing. Depending on the country you're in, you not only have different base colors, but different combination of parts colors. Now in the US, no matter what color the base color is, you have silver panels in the middle of the bike. And they also have differing colors that go underneath the gas tank. In this model year, that's also silver. Sometimes that is color matched to the rest of the bike. What I would love to do, but it's very expensive because it's not sold in the US and it would have to be imported, is get the red panels that go in the middle of the bike and the red strip that goes underneath the gas tank. So the whole thing would be red instead of having these two little splashes of silver that don't really go with anything else, because every other part on the bike is black. I could get black very inexpensively because those parts are sold in the US, but they have not yet made those US parts in red. But man, it looks beautiful. It really makes it look like a BMW. And Holland, I know, has that option. They have theirs all in red this year. It just looks gorgeous. You got a whole bunch of other factory add-on parts you can put on it. You've got wrist guards or hand guards that are basically big plastic air dams that protect your hands from wind and rain. Same thing down for foot guards. They have what are called sliders, which are basically wear items. So if you drop your bike and it's sliding on the ground, you're not scratching up your very expensive plastic panels. You're scraping away these frame sliders, which are like little rubber pucks, kind of like hockey pucks, and they're sticking out a little bit from the side of the bike. Now, that doesn't obviously guarantee you're not going to have any other damage, but they certainly do work in some kinds of crashes or drops, especially if it drops in a parking lot. I'm kind of debating on whether to put them on. I don't like the looks of them, to be honest, on any of them. There are a lot of aftermarket options also. But, you know, you have to weigh the option. If you drop your bike just once, I mean, it's going to cost you, bare minimum, your insurance deductible, or a couple grand in panels and mirror and bar ends and levers and whatever gets hit, your side bags. I mean, it's a balancing act between looks, cost of protection, and cost of replacement. Right now, like I said, staying all stock. I stayed stock on my other one too. It did fall twice in parking lots, and I spent a few $100 in replacement parts, but that's just a personal choice. Let's talk about passenger comfort. I have never ridden as a passenger on this, probably never will. I don't know if I'd allow anyone to ride it like that, with me on the back at least. My wife likes it. She does feel that the seat has the same limitations as the rider seat, so she'll appreciate the aftermarket when it comes in, I'm sure. She never had a problem with the previous one, and the design back there has not changed. The pegs are in the same position, and she likes that just fine. Rider position compared to passenger is very good. She has good airflow, so no problem there. We've gone for hours and hours, other than just stretching your legs and giving your butt a rest. No issues there with passenger comfort, so it is a great bike for actual touring and trips. Obviously not the same kind of level as a Harley Tourer or a Goldwing or anything like that with a nice big plush back seat and armrests and a backrest and all that kind of stuff, but it's not designed to be. Now you can get the optional trunk bags with backrests, so that obviously adds a huge level of comfort if you're doing some serious passenger riding. So that's another benefit to that part. Well, I guess this will wrap it up. I'm going to head on back home. Can't really think of anything else to say off the top of my head about it. I think I've covered all the major points. And of course, I got a ton of other videos. And like I said, check out my previous video on comparing this to the Generation 2. If you have a Generation 2, that should help you kind of make a decision, especially in conjunction with this video, to kind of give you a real rider's view of it, especially from one that had a lot of seat time in the previous generation. Oh, I completely forgot to go over the ES system. Alright, I knew there was something major I was forgetting. The entire point of this model, the ES, is the electronic suspension. What it gives you is complete electronic push-button control of preload and dampening, both front and rear. So if you have a passenger, you can set it to automatically raise the preload. It raises the bike up. That keeps your suspension working in the middle of its stroke, which is very important for any suspension to make sure it's working correctly. Otherwise, you can top or bottom out. Setting the dampening makes sure that you don't have a pogo effect. It makes sure that the suspension is working to give you correct support and a plush ride. It has 27 different positions for the dampening, so you can dial it in any position that you can possibly think of. You are going to be the limiting factor in this suspension, not it. A lot of people have asked, how does this compare to a good aftermarket suspension setup? Which, after several thousand miles on a stock suspension, is certainly a big improvement. Now, I have not run the aftermarkets, but a lot of people that I've seen feedback for or from have said that this compares directly to a great aftermarket system. So and I can confirm that it works absolutely beautifully. When I'm riding alone, I set the preload down. I set the dampening to whatever conditions I want. If I'm on the freeway, I want to make it nice and soft. Those expansion joints, that smooths them right out. It gives you a nice Cadillac ride. If I'm doing some fast twisties like I did at the Ozella Trail video, set it up to hard. Gives you much better control. Keeps the bike tracking well. If I'm on normal roads like this, it's in standard. It's a great mix. I don't have rough roads. I don't need it super plush. But I'm not doing hard turns. I don't need it super hard. It soaks up all the bumps. It just works. And then you have plus and minus 3 on each of those settings. Soft, standard, or hard. So like I said, you are the limiting factor. Your preload has 4 different adjustments. You have single rider, bags off, single rider, bags on, 2 riders, bags off, and 2 riders, bags on. So that gives you very fine control of your preload. And it is perfect. I mean, it just freaking works. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, I've got the ES and the system is kind of useless for me. Well, you probably bought the wrong model. If you don't have changing riding conditions, if you don't go from single to dual passenger, if you don't go from needing a soft ride to needing a hard ride, you should have bought the regular model and saved $1,500 or whatever you could get a discount on. The point is, if you only set your bike up for one perfect setup for you, then the ES is 100% pointless, because it's designed to be there and be adjusted. It's designed to be used, and I use the snot out of it. So I absolutely love it. But like I said, if you're a solo rider and you do one kind of roads, get the A model and save yourself some money. Everything else is exactly the same on the bike. The only difference being you don't have the adjustable suspension. So that's my review. Hope it helped. Definitely check out TwoWheelObsession.com. We now have 5 people contributing videos. We've got people all over the world. And there's going to be more. I'm gathering people, not just FJR riders, but anybody that's doing more adult-oriented vlogging videos. And it's really working out well. I absolutely enjoy, even if nobody else does, I absolutely enjoy watching everybody else's videos to see the really cool scenery. I mean, everything from out west in the US to England, Australia, just all kinds of sweet stuff. And just beautiful video work. You know, just kind of like I wish I could do some more like that around here, but there really aren't. Oh, that's a bummer. I thought that light was going to turn first. Might have changed it. They just repaved this. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. We'll see you next time.